in living organisms. While the primary function of lipids is long-term energy storage, lipids are also used for protection, insulation, and lubrication. They also act as precursors for some hormones and are a key component of cell membranes. There are 4 basic groups of lipids. These are triglycerides, phospholipids, steroids, and waxes. Although these groups differ in many respects, they all have one characteristic in common. They are all insoluble in water. You may have noticed that lipids and water do not mix. For example, notice the yellow-colored oil in the beaker of water shown here? Even if we stirred this for several minutes, or even several hours, the oil would still separate out from the water. This is because lipids are hydrophobic. From Latin, the prefix hydro means water, and phobic means fear of. So when you hear that lipids are hydrophobic, this basically means that water and lipids do not mix. Let's take a closer look at the category of lipids known as triglycerides. Triglycerides include the fats and oils. Fats, such as lard and butter, are solid at room temperature and are used by animals for insulation, protection, and long-term energy storage. Oils, such as corn oil and olive oil, are liquid at room temperature and are used by plants for long-term energy storage. At the molecular level, triglycerides contain 2 types of subunit molecules, glycerol and fatty acids. Let's take a quick look at fatty acids. A fatty acid has 3 main parts: a chain of carbon and hydrogen atoms called the hydrocarbon chain, a methyl group at one end, and an acid group at the other end. Fatty acids can either be saturated or unsaturated. A fatty acid that has only single carbon-to-carbon bonds is known as a saturated fatty acid. This is because the carbon chain is saturated with all the hydrogen atoms it can hold. Unsaturated fatty acids have 1 to several double bonds. Double bonds result in kinks in the fatty acid chain, which affects the melting point of the fat. Animal fats have saturated fatty acids and are solid at room temperature, while vegetable oils have 1 or more double bonds and are liquid at room temperature. A trans fat is an example of an unsaturated fatty acid where the hydrogen atoms are on opposite sides of the double bond. Trans fats are usually formed during the production of processed foods and are also common in partially hydrogenated oils. In order to increase shelf life and melting point of the fat, excess hydrogen atoms are introduced to an unsaturated oil. This causes the formation of trans fat bonds